Good afternoon, everyone, and thank you for choosing Across the Fence. I'm Will Michael. Being a grandparent can be one of the special joys of growing older. You've probably heard the saying, if I had known grandchildren were going to be so much fun, I would have had them first. Now, obviously, not all grandparents are the same, and the roles grandparents play and the styles they use are varied and different. So as we kick off a new week with a new edition of Money Monday, we're focusing on grandparenting financial style. Our expert has some tips and advice for 21st century grandparents. And our Money Monday expert is certified financial planner Christine Moriarty. Christine is the president of Money Peace in Bristol, and she joins us each month to address specific money-related topics. Good to see you again. Thanks for coming in.
Thanks for having me here.
So what is it that you mean? We had a little slide up there that said grandparenting financial style. What's that mean to you?
I think it depends on the grandparents, but a lot of grandparents say, oh, I wish I was able to teach my children about money, and I didn't. Maybe I can teach my grandchildren about money. Some grandparents have their grandkids all during the week after school. Some of them have them full time. Like, it's all different relationships, and I think we need to look at that and how we can educate our grandchildren. And
I think it's probably fair to say there's one thing with all those styles and all those different relationships that grandparents want to provide something if they can. They want to make their grandchildren happy.
They want to make them happy, and who doesn't? I mean, it's just like delightful to have young blood and young kids around. And so what I tell people is to create a plan and know what you can give. So, for example, you don't want to give more than you can. You don't want to be making promises you can't keep. So that's first. Know what you have so that you can appreciate what you give, but also not make it a hardship on yourself.
And one of the key points that you and I have talked about in previous programs related to that, no more than you have, is that idea that sorry, lost my train of thought. Very quickly, it's that idea that we as grandparents, that's a vulnerable time for the grandparents. They're now probably in retirement, and so giving more than you have is, sorry, again, I lost my train of thought, but that was the key point.
Yeah, people still need to have a cash flow plan, know where you stand, because as grandparents, we're following our emotions and maybe giving more. But if you start first with you having a good financial status and basis, then you'll know what you can give, and you can give with joy. I have one client I know who has a grandchildren's account and puts extra money in there, and then knows how much he has every month, every year to be gifting and having fun, rather than saying, oh, it's so-and-so's birthday and now what do I do? And so make a plan.
No, there are events like a birthday, other things, which you sort of call a gift event. In other words, these things happen.
Right. It could be a graduation. It can be a birthday. It can be a wedding. We need to think about these as grandparents, like what legacy do I want to give my grandchildren? And if you have more than one, how do I make this consistent across the board? We were talking off air. You used to get, the money that was your age from your grandmother.
Correct, a check for your age.
I would get $5 in a card, but things have changed. And if you had 17 grandchildren, like my grandmother, I'm sure she couldn't give more than $5.
So you're talking now about some of the older or traditional ways
of giving,
an era that we grew up in, and one of the things we've talked about is that things might have changed. So here's an example of what you call the old ways.
The old ways were giving savings bonds. I don't know if you remember the old type of savings bonds, a $25 savings bond. I know my grandmother had one for me that old way, and those are really important lists to go over one by one as we can see them, is that having them in front of you to say a savings bond can be a large amount or a small amount, but children these days don't know how they work. Some of their parents don't know how they work. So you want to maybe not do it even though you thought it was a great idea. The United Gift to Minors Act, which is next on the list, which is also called the United Transfer Minors Act, which means you can give money to children up to the max of $15,000 a year, but it stays in a parent or guardian's name. That was a great idea, but remember that age 18 or age of majority, they have control over that money. So you need to think about these that we didn't think about as kids or when we received them. The other thing is cash and checks. Cash is great. Putting it in the mail isn't so great. Having checks, children these days don't know what to do with checks.
You told me this again off camera before we started, and I hadn't thought about it, but it was like, yeah, you give a young person, maybe under the age of 15, a check. What is that today?
Exactly.
Yep.
And unless you've taught them that and done those kind of things, there's savings accounts too, and it's harder to open a savings account. What I understand now from bankers I talk to, they want the parents opening them rather than the grandparents for them, like my mother did. She opened savings accounts for each of the grandchildren and put money in there on their birthdays as well as gave them a gift. But that's not as easy to do with new tax laws and post 9/11.
Now you have a corollary here to what you call the older ways. You have something called the newer ways.
The newer ways to think about, and these are harder for us as grandparents because we grew up differently. If you're thinking, I want to help my grandchild go to college, a 529 plan is a type of plan that works and helps for college. As of this year, you can also put it into high school, and that you can put up to the $15,000. However, even at the age of majority, it stays in the control of the parent or grandparent, whoever is the first name on there rather than the child. The next one is the cover deal, and that you can put $2,000 in a year, which that's the max. So that might be appropriate, and that can be used, like the 529 plans, for education K through 12 as well as college. Then grandparents might want to say, hey, I want my grandchild to have a little extra money. I'll make them the beneficiary of this life insurance or this retirement plan. And that's a great way because they'll get a little bonus after you're gone, but have some money they wouldn't have had. And then a lot of grandparents are saying, oh, it's a honeymoon. These kids have everything today. Or they're 35 and they already have a home or apartment set up. And young adults are asking for travel money for a honeymoon or for down payments for a house. And it's now getting very traditional to help out that way.
Christine, the top of your list that we just saw, the 529 plans, they're not new, but to a lot of people, it might be a new product. A first-time grandparent saying, wait a minute, my kids didn't have that, we didn't have it. So tell us a little bit more about that 529.
Right, and I think it's important to note, for the state of Vermont, the 529 plan, if you put in $2,500, you will get a $250 credit.
So 10% of whatever I'm...
No, up to
okay.
$250.
Okay.
So it's that's a worthwhile way to look at it. There's a Vermont-sponsored plan. That's only if you fund a Vermont-sponsored plan. There's plenty of them out there, one for every state at least. If you look at this, the phone number, it's 1-800-637-5860. You can call and get more information in the application. Or if you're on email, you can certainly email them. It's run through VSAC, which is Vermont Student Assistance Corp. And they have great programs to help you understand how much you can put in. You can put in up to $15,000 a year, and actually, when you win the lottery, like I heard someone just claimed it this morning, is that you can put up to 5 years of that $15,000 in there. So we're talking more like $75,000 can go in all at once if you wanted.
So if we're not winning the lottery and it is just a small amount of money, one of the questions I have about 529s, if that grandchild then doesn't use that for education, what would happen?
Great question. One, it's your money because your name's on it. If you put yours first, you can take it out. You will pay taxes because one of the beauties of that program is it grows tax-free.
But we're not locked in if a child makes a different decision and isn't at a traditional four-year school or something like that.
Right, and you can also use it for other grandchildren within the same household.
Okay.
So
Let me switch gears a little bit.
Certainly.
Talking about saving money for a grandchild. Have those rules changed?
Those have a little bit. That's why I was mentioned with the savings accounts. It's not as easy as it used to be to just say, oh, I'll open a savings account because I have their social security number on it. You could do a joint account with them, but you won't be able to open an account just for them as a child. I mean, I remember running down the street, because I grew up outside Boston, and opening my first savings account at age 7, and I was so proud of my passbook.
Not
no
anymore.
passbooks.
Not anymore.
Yeah.
A couple of minutes left, and one of the situations that may be different is if we're talking about full-time grandparents. These are things that are happening more and more often for a variety of reasons, but from a financial style, why is this important?
This is really important because you want to think in a bigger picture. You are a parent, so remember, you need to take care of legal, meaning have a will and everything in place, a guardian for your grandchild. You want to consider your cash flow, because a lot of people take on this additional responsibility out of love and then are concerned about the cash. And then there's a lot of resources out there to help you out when you have it.
Spend just a moment, walk us through some of these resources that you're referring to.
So don't let your cash flow bother you, because there's resources that will be up on the screen that go a whole slew across. You can join clubs like Boys and Girls Club that have free care. There's state services for parents and grandparents, whether you're a foster parent or official parent. There's community services that help with heat. Social Security you definitely want to talk to, because often they have caregiving money for grandchildren and children under 18 who haven't graduated. And there's also heating and other deductions and food assistance.
Christine, I need to stop us there. We're just about out of time. I want to thank you very much for coming in.
Thank you.
And I want to remind our viewers that if they have questions or comments for Christine, she'd appreciate hearing from you. You can call her at the 453-5913, or you can visit the website moneypeace.com. That is our program for today. We know you have choices, so thanks for choosing us. I'm Will Michael, inviting you to join us back here each weekday afternoon for another visit Across the Fence.